we live together.
Mm-hmm.
And despite that fact, we've barely seen each other for probably 2 months now.
Yeah, well, because if I'm traveling, you're home. If you're traveling, I'm home. So now we're finally reunited.
And
it feels good.
In that time, that's such a long amount of time for two people to be apart that life has happened in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
I hit 1 million subs, recorded with Bumstead, Sam Harris, Hormozy, went to that Gymshark event. You traveled to the UK, Korea, Japan, then came back, then went to the CrossFit Games for the entire time. Rogan posted a piece of your content on the show that he did, reacted to a piece of content on the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've broken some more subscriber milestones, and now I'm about to leave for another 2 weeks. So this is like a brief period. Like everybody else might not care. I haven't caught up with you, so I want to know what the headlines have been from the last couple of months of your life.
Just more of the same. Like it's the content game. You know it. I know it. It's what's cool is like for those of us or for people who aren't in the content game, basically everyone who's listening to this, it's very interesting to find people who are also in it and then live with that person. So it's like, I kind of get motivated by your work, and I feel like sometimes you check in and you're like, holy shit, Zach's done something pretty big here. But yeah, it's just more the same. Like, getting crazy interviews, meeting people who, so Ben Smith, the winner of the CrossFit Games back in 2015 or 2016 or something, maybe 2014, I forget. He was one of my heroes in CrossFit. I'm at the airport and he walks up to me. He literally likes a beeline for me. He goes, "Hey man, I love your stuff on YouTube." I'm like,
fanboys over you,
bro. I have, yeah. So we like clicked immediately. I went to Virginia Beach and I actually just did a training session with him. I didn't even cover it or put it on my YouTube channel. It was just so cool for things like that to happen. And I know that that's been happening to you, like, because I knew you before you would have ever had a chance to have been on Rogan, let alone be friends with Rogan. So it's really, really fun.
You just had an episode on Rogan where some episode got responded to. What was that? I haven't watched that episode yet. I saw your screenshot of it, but I haven't seen it. What were they reacting to and what they say?
So it was Alexander Karelin, who is one of the most dominant athletes, period, of all time. I think he went over a decade without losing in wrestling. So he's a Greco-Roman wrestler, and he was a super heavyweight, I think. So that's like kind of like the unlimited class, but he was picking up guys, like he's picking up the super heavyweights, and that's not typically the thing. He had, his main move was the Karelin lift, where it's like you hold someone around the waist, but upside down, and then you can throw them or whatever. He was so good and so athletic that some athletes would forfeit before even going up against him. They would literally forfeit before going up against him. And the numbers that he hit in the weight room, this is why it was so interesting to me. The numbers that he hit in the weight room, the size of this guy, and then his athleticism. He could do backflips. He could do the splits. He was about like 6'3", 280 pounds in his prime, like right around 300-ish maybe at his heaviest. But he was a freak of nature. And I made a video on it, and it kind of popped off a little bit. It exploded late. You know how videos do that? Like they're just kind of whatever. And then like a year later, they just go. That happened to this video. And then I posted it, part of it, to my Instagram. And Rogan saw it on my Instagram, followed me on Instagram, which was pretty cool. And then recently he was talking with someone, I forget who it was, but
Gad Saad.
Gad Saad. And he was like, "Have you heard of this guy Karelin? Go on YouTube, you search Alexander Karelin, whose video pops up. It's your boy's video. It's right there."
Let's go.
So they're pulling it up, watching
How did that feel?
It felt good, but it was also like, it's not like they went, "Oh, this guy, Zack Telander, made a really good video." It wasn't about...
You're a byproduct of...
Exactly. I just provided the info for them. However, the follow on Instagram was much bigger deal, for sure.
Yeah, that adrenaline dump is one hell of a drug.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's interesting, like, finding cool stories. Think about... CoffeeZilla, when he was pumping out stuff more frequently, what was exciting about him was he was finding crypto scams and grifters and stuff from projects that you'd never even heard of. It wasn't always Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX or Logan Paul's CryptoZoo. It was people that you didn't even know about. So it's like a literally like a documentary that teaches you about something that you would have never known about previously. So I think that's what's cool. And obviously, when you have someone that goes narrow and deep like you do, or Derek, in sport specifically, or pharmacology, you end up with really interesting ideas. So yeah, man, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is this new transgender athlete division in some strength sports. But first, we need to talk about our old friend, Billy MacFarland, guy that did Fyre Festival. So for the people that aren't familiar, fraudster Billy MacFarland relaunches Fyre Festival from behind bars with $8,000 tickets. His rerun of the event, which previously ended in disaster in 2017, is set to take place in December next year. So he was in jail for quite a while. It seems like he's out now, and he puts this video up in a bathrobe, looking like the most aristocratic, like New York wanker that you can think of. And he said, "This is a big day. It has been the absolute wildest journey to get here, and it all started during a 7-month stint in solitary confinement. I wrote out this 50-page plan of how it would take this overall interest and demand in Fyre, and how it would take my ability to bring people from around the world together to make the impossible happen." Long story short, he has released tickets. First sale of tickets have sold out for another Fyre Festival in the Caribbean, which I think is where it was last time, Pablo Escobar's island. Mm-hmm. And he's just running it back.
Well,
he's just like, we'll just do it again.
Yeah, I have a question. So he wrote a 50-page manifesto or something
in solitary confinement, like a business.
Number one thing, my brother in Christ, it's not that deep. It really isn't. You got a bunch of models. I'm sorry, you got a bunch of models and, you know, kind of A-ish celebrities to post an orange photo, and but this was before viral was like so saturated online, and this idea of Fyre Festival exploded. It was over your head. You didn't cancel it quick enough, and you stole a bunch of money from a bunch of people. It's not that deep. Oh, what? So you're reinventing yourself, doing this thing. It's like you're just trying to do another festival. Like it's been done now since.
You're not Ted Kaczynski. This isn't like you trying to fix the problems of the world. Yeah, I don't know. I've got such interesting thoughts feelings about Billy MacFarland, because I know for a fact that if he'd managed to pull off the Fyre Festival, people, even if it just wasn't a complete disaster, even if it was remotely acceptable, people would have hailed him as a marketing genius. Because
this is what me and you always end up talking about this. We love winners. The world loves winners. And it doesn't even matter how evil, how bad they are. If they win, you have to, there's a decent amount of people who are just going to be like, yeah, but dude, look at the money. Look at he fulfilled, he came back. We love a comeback story. It's like, well, you can't forgive and forget everything like that. I mean, this is Andrew Tate. This is, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, the Logan Paul rug pull, with Crypto Zoo. I think like 2 weeks later or 4 weeks later, he did a deal with Dana White and the UFC, and now he's doing a deal with Bayern Munich. It's like it's just, you keep moving. If you're one of these guys, you get in trouble, you keep moving, you start winning again. Everyone goes, yeah, but like they won.
I would have thought so with Billy MacFarland specifically, after the two documentaries, one that was on Netflix and the other that was on Hulu, I think, they were so damning, right? People got to learn about him as this awful, predatory business partner who called in the military genius of Ja Rule to be his operator. Like the guy that time in New York was crazy too.
By the way, you and I, our age group, that was us. It was like the 2013 to 2016 Instagram was very interesting because virality and new social media trends was popping off. And my friend lived in New York at the time, and I think he had one of those black cards that Billy MacFarland was making and Ja Rule was promoting. And like weird shit was happening in these clubs and stuff, and like weird partnerships.
Yeah.
What a brain trust that was.
Yeah, really, really pulled in all of the high IQ players to get Ja Rule in to come and fix it. And then it's like, almost, if you do that, if you get someone who's a rapper in as your business partner, it's almost a little bit like, well, we couldn't have expected much. It was Ja Rule that he was the brains behind the operation that tried to bring it all to market. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like, Billy MacFarland, separate to Logan and Jake specifically, I think Tate's kind of a bit of a different animal, but Logan and Jake have an unbelievable resilience in terms of their public image. I don't know anybody that's been able to ride waves in the same way that those two guys have. You can throw anything that you want at those guys, and it doesn't seem to stick. And a little bit of it is kind of like maybe people have become desensitized to those guys being in the news for bad things. It's like, just like add it to the list. There's the suicide forest, and there's the crypto zoo, and there's this thing. Like Prime doesn't have, it's all potassium, it's no sodium, and it's the coconut concentrate, not coconut water, and blah, blah, blah. It's just a big list, a big laundry list of things that have occurred, and people no longer really see it with the same kind of gravity. And the final thing, which is Destiny's strategy, which works so well. I've told you about this before. He calls it just keep streaming, which is like the Dory from Finding Nemo, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. He says people only remember your last 3 streams. So on the first one, everyone's going to come out and give you loads of shit. And on the second one, they're going to give you some shit. And then on the third one, the shit's kind of a little bit old. And by the fourth one, everyone's forgotten. And I do think that it's this sort of momentum game that these guys are able to stay on. And regardless of what you think about them, regardless of whether you think that Logan Paul is a good guy or a bad guy or a media genius or an idiot that's managed to position himself well, his ability to withstand media assault, whether it's from mainstream or below the line, whether it's legitimate or manifested like artificially, is ungodly.
Yeah, it's the nose blindness to fucking up that I think that the world has, right?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. That's such a good way to put it.
Yeah. Because we're just like, the room stinks like shit, but we've been in here for two hours, and at that point, like it's our base level.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I don't know, man, but this Fyre Festival 2.0, it's like, how is this guy able to conduct a business? Is there no business litigation thing that says, like you shoot someone and you get out of jail and it's like, yo, you don't get to have firearms anymore. If you con and trap people on an island with no water and a couple of tents from Hurricane Katrina, guess what? You don't get to run festivals no more. But maybe he's got Ja Rule back in as the operator. I don't know.
This is definitely a stipulation or a sanction that a lot of white collar criminals face. When they go to jail, they're not allowed to trade anymore. They're not allowed to have. These are literally written into their punishments.
Computer hackers aren't allowed access to the internet or to be near a digital device, stuff like
precisely. That. And I would love to know like the depth of these, because I think that's very interesting. I feel like your commenters would, some people in business could chime in on it, but I think
someone will know.
Yeah, someone will definitely know. But I think that there has to be something like that. Like he should not be able to do this for sure. There's no way.
But it's not even like, oh, this is a tangential thing. I've actually pivoted and I'm going to do a fitness event.
Is he calling it Fyre Fest?
Fyre 2. It's like in fact the website is like fire2.com or something.
Oh, sick.
And you think, oh, it's unbelievable. And then he was defrauding investors and doing all of this other stuff. So yeah, I don't know, man. You're right. The world loves a winner, and this sort of trickle down effect that you get of success. In the last year, I've been around a lot of like super successful people, and they have nothing short of a reality distortion field around them. Like they move, and it's not largely their fault. Like people just are so keen to not upset the person that they see as being a gateway between them and success in the world, that it literally does move reality around them. And yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with this Billy MacFarland thing. It's December 2024. It's already sold out on the first batch of tickets.
Are you kidding?
Oh, it's already sold out. But then it's really limited. It looks like there's only 1,000 tickets in total, but the final stage of tickets top out at $7,000 each. So it's not, I don't know, it's like high ticket, low volume.
Which is the opposite, I think, of he just promised everything when he
previously. And there was the 25 grand villas and 100 grand yachts and all sorts of other fuckery that was going on. All right, next thing. The International Powerlifting Federation has changed its policy, seemingly in response to outrage generated by a male dominating female competitions, breaking records along the way. Male competitor Anne Andres, 40, recently defeated all female competitors at the Canadian Powerlifting Union's 2023 Western Canadian Championship by lifting a combined score of 1,317 pounds, beating the second place finisher by more than 450 pounds. You did a video on this a long time ago, or a good while ago. You were really out ahead of this. For the people that don't know, what's happening in powerlifting, what's happening with transgender categories in that sport?
So this was specific to the CPC, Canadian Powerlifting Commission, or some I forget what the name of the actual federation was, but it was in Canada, and that happened. The woman, the trans woman, Andres, I think was her last name, and so she wiped the floor, especially in the bench press. And then there was one of the head coaches of the Canadian powerlifting team when they went to IPF Worlds, so the International Powerlifting Federation Worlds. He did a massive troll of this rule, which stated at the time, it stated whatever you determine you are,
self-ID.
Yes, that is it. And it was at the time, it was pretty much the loosest form of this. Although I think in skateboarding, they've been doing it, things that aren't officially either Olympic sports or world champion sanctioned sports with like WADA and things like that.
They've recognized self-ID for gender category determination.
Mm-hmm. So for a sport that's like has a pretty decent world federation, this was a pretty crazy rule. And this guy went and trolled it. And he did 100, for him, this bench press was pretty low. Like 160 kilos for a strong bencher is really not hard. Like I know guys that can do sets of 5 with that. And again, this is like so far above the average human being. It's ridiculous. He goes up and does 160 kilos. And the next nearest to him, I think, was like 105.
So just to get this straight, this is the coach, one of the coaches of the Canadian powerlifting team, female powerlifting team?
Just team.
Right, okay. The Canadian powerlifting team decided bearded, like 200 pounds or more.
Yeah, no, like just a man.
Just a man who said,
I'm a woman.
I'm a woman now, decided to take this to the extreme with this particular competition, steps up, puts up what would probably be a world record?
Yeah, for sure.
By a distance in terms of
but because it wasn't a world, it won't be classified as that.
But had he have been at the Olympics or had he have been somewhere else, that would have been a world record that will never, ever, ever, ever be beaten.
Correct. Yes. And the craziest thing was Andres was on the spotting team for it. She was. Yeah.
So if he'd failed the rep, then this person would have had to.
Yeah. The woman who this was kind of pointing at the time, it was in the same area. That's why this happened. And it's interesting that this rule came out. I didn't know that they had done it with powerlifting because my sport is Olympic weightlifting, and that's what I focus on. They just recently came up with a transgender category, but I didn't know that they did this, but I had been covering what this dude had done. And it's interesting that they're making the rule, but they're probably following suit of what was started by FINA, which is the nationals or the governing swimming organization. They were the first people to produce a open category.
What's open?
Open is the category for trans people who do not transition before Tanner stage 3, which is essentially just puberty. Like it's going to be 11 to 13 in females and let's say 12 to 14 in males or 11 to 14 in males.
So am I right in saying that the current set of rules now create a limit, and the limit is basically puberty for both boys and girls? If you go through that, you are unable to compete in the opposite gender. You could compete in your own gender, your biological sex, or you could compete in this open category, but you couldn't switch across to the other one. However, if you did start on puberty blockers before you hit puberty, which is really, really rare, to do it before. Gender dysphoria seems to kick in once puberty begins in any case, and getting access to it, especially in the UK after this Tavistock clinic. I had this lady on the show who she was talking about how this is really, really being rolled back in the UK, which I think is a very positive development. It's going to be very unlikely. And you're going to have one hell of a tyrannical parent to go, my son is going to be a world champion female swimmer at 10 years old, so we're going to put them on a course of puberty blockers so that in 15 years time they can win a gold medal. That seems very unlikely.
Yeah, so they created this open category. The thing with that is, though, it is now a self-ID. So you could have a whirlwind of problems if someone decides to self-ID and go destroy in that.
Well, it depends how prestigious the open category becomes.
It won't be for sure, and it won't be in the Olympics either. So that is the big thing with when we look at swimming and Olympic weightlifting. And I'm assuming that almost all Olympic sports are going to have this domino effect because this is very new news for Olympic weightlifting. Olympic weightlifting is just not prevalent as powerlifting, but this just happened in my sport as well. And I feel like it's going to the dominoes are going to fall and it's going to be open category. But the problem is this open category will likely not exist. It's definitely not going to exist in Paris. Who knows if it'll ever exist? And I think after Paris is LA. But that's where the limiting factor is. I think FINA responded to Leah Thomas.
Yeah. Why is it that you think that swimming led the way?
Because of Leah Thomas. It had to have been. They would never admit such a thing, but that whole Leah Thomas argument crossed every bit of culture. No matter, if we look at Olympic sports, we genuinely don't care about it. However, there are certain names, especially like Michael Phelps. And when the Olympics comes on, swimming is for sure one of the most popular events. So, that Leah Thomas thing comes in, it's we can all kind of connect to swimming. And then, that was massive. That crossed everything. That created a massive culture war. And I think FINA's response was directly from that.
And then who was the one? I want to say Riley Reid, but that's a porn star. Who was who's the chick? Riley Gaines? Riley?
Track and field?
No, she was the blonde a girl that kind of came out being pro women. She was like the Fox News to Leah Thomas's CNN.
Right. I'm
pretty sure it was Riley Gaines.
There was a spokeswoman who was
Riley Gaines. Riley Gaines. I got it right. Sorry for accusing you of being Riley Reid.
There were couples. There were a couple of women who had spoken out who were on previous Olympic teams. But I will say this. So Leah Thomas, for weightlifting, it was a woman named Laurel Hubbard. And I've covered that plenty of times on my channel. It's I've literally been covering it for forever. But for those who don't know, Laurel Hubbard, she transitioned at 33 years old and was a junior weightlifting champion in New Zealand. And mind you, the numbers that when it was he was lifting were not competitive on the international scale. In fact, I've actually lifted more than both of his previous junior.
Pick whichever identification you want.
Yeah.
You've lifted more than them.
Right. But that's not to say that I'm a good lifter. It's just to say that it's good, but it's not internationally good, not even remotely close. The transition happens and she wins the Commonwealth Games.
She didn't she bow out of
Commonwealth Championships?
Didn't she bow out of something? Games. Was it Tokyo that she?
So she got injured.
Snapped her shit.
She snapped her shit in. I think it was the World Championships where we had an American woman in the same category, and I know her coach, and I know her. And if she had medaled and taken away a medal from her, they would have freaked out. These are Southern people from Texas. It's where they train. They would have freaked out. Yeah. So that Laurel Hubbard, the response is now, the IWF, which is the International Weightlifting Federation. They placed the open category. Then we have the whole Andres, and I think the guy's name is Avi Silverberg or something like that. Avi something, and that whole drama created a bunch of culture war drama. Then they responded to that. It's almost as if every one of these organizations, they're all responses to these big culture war snaps. So it does work. It does work.
But it depends. It depends on what you mean by it does work. Is it the response that's working, or is it the fact that you need a Leah Thomas, a Laurel Hubbard, a Andres person to spearhead pushback? Like they cause a problem and then people respond to that. But it definitely seems like the 3 sports, there may be more sports that this has happened in. I haven't seen it. The 3 sports that have done it and been most forthcoming with it are the ones that have had the most coverage about trans athletes.
I think track and field is next, for sure.
So
because we had there was an intersex 800 meter sprinter or 800 meter runner. Sorry, it's mid distance. Who's like the fastest woman of all time. Like in that, I forget the name. It was
the open category. Is the open category M to F open and F to M open, or is it just one block of both?
I'm not sure. I'm leaning towards just one block of both.
Because if it's a single block,
then there's unfairness.
The F to M, that every single one of those athletes isn't part of this.
Yeah.
Right? It's another sport category that's dominated by biological men.
It wouldn't make sense to just have it as one, but then again, you have 2. Okay, well now there's...
How many competitors are there?
Does it keep just going and going?
Yeah, and then it's the F to M who have got gluten intolerance and athlete's foot. Then it's the F to M who've got gluten intolerance, athlete's foot, and like didn't like to eat peas as a kid, and you just keep on rolling down from there.
Right. That is one of the biggest arguments of people who are in support of self-identification is that sport is filled with disadvantages and advantages. So someone can be born with more testosterone than someone else. So is that an advantage that we need to now hinder? Because testosterone works on a spectrum. You know, you could say this with so many different things. Humans are born differently, but that's why we have sport, to see who is different.
Yeah. To
see who is different. But we need to have some sort of classification, male, female, and now open.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm waiting for it'll happen at some point and it'll get laughed out of the room, but there will be a very extreme body positivity sort of victimhood progressive narrative that comes to try and take out success in sports. It's like, so why is it that the thinnest people are the ones that get to do gymnastics? Like, who is it that actually says that these standards of being able to do a backflip are the best in gymnastics? Who actually says that grace or the quickest one? Because I noticed that when I look at the line of the 100 meters finals, that's not a very diverse set of bodies that we've got up there. You know, I do think that you're going to see like some insane, ridiculous person trying to push this narrative. But Lizzo, unfortunately, is not doing her part for the body positive community. Because you see this story about her making dancers eat bananas out of the vaginas of
strippers and
in Amsterdam, and then body shaming them all and doing all the rest of it.
Yeah, you know, I think Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan talked about this, and Tim had a really good point. It was like Lizzo kind of went on and hired people to be her dancers that aren't professional dancers. You know, like they're good, you know, and then they're plus sized. And the point was, I want to prove that, you know, these people can be in show business as well. And what happened was there was a line of problems that followed up on it. And then I think someone tried to record her like being abusive. And then she threatened to like lock the doors and figure out who it was. But yeah, I got to be honest with you, man. I couldn't care less about Lizzo and the things that she does, to be fair. Yeah.
Well, if you think that woman was ever being genuinely like pro body positivity, I don't think that you're a particularly good judge of people. Like Ellen DeGeneres, I know that there was all of this news that came out about her and how mean she was and stuff like that. She didn't ever seem like anyone to me that wasn't just a performative mouthpiece for what she thought would make her likable. And
or Lizzo, make her money.
Make her money, yeah, which included being likable. All right, next thing that I want to talk to you about. Do you think that watching porn constitutes cheating?
This is a good one.
Let me give you some more context, and you
Yeah.
can ponder on that question along with everybody
Was
else.
there a study?
A woman explains why she made her husband look away when Florence Pugh appeared in Oppenheimer. Apparently, there is a raunchy sex scene throughout Oppenheimer. And this lady, West Virginia TikToker Jordan Kerr, has revealed that there's one scene her husband didn't watch while they were enjoying the new movie at the cinemas, as he had to close his eyes and rest his head on her shoulder. This is all because she said she suffered betrayal trauma after discovering that he watched porn. One of her female followers had asked if she had any advice for how her and her husband could watch Oppenheimer whilst being fully afraid of the Florence Pugh scene everyone's talking about. And she said that she researched aggressively every single movie that they're going to watch before they watch it, and especially this one. And when the movie came up, he had to place his head on her shoulder with his eyes closed, and then she got to tell him when that scene had finished. I went through betrayal trauma 10 months ago after 9 years of marriage, 10 years of being in a completely monogamous relationship, she said. I was fully into the belief that he didn't look at other women. He didn't self-pleasure at other women. Porn was the furthest thing from my mind. I never would have thought or believed that he was using porn, but he was. And I found out about it on September 17th, 2022. That was the hardest day of my life. It was the hardest following weeks and following months of my life. Betrayal trauma has changed me as a person inside and out. It put me through a lot of stress. It put me through a lot of pain. It put me through sickness. It put me through depression, gave me a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. I've come a long way in healing. I'm still with my husband and so happy and thankful. I'm proud to say that he's been sober for 10 months. He's been doing all the steps, all the work, everything necessary to not only change and stay sober, reach long-term recovery, but also assure me that he is creating a safe space. He is becoming a trustworthy person, and he is showing me the signs that I need by his actions, his behaviors, and his patterns that he is going in the right direction.
So the context is important with that situation for sure. Like if you're having problems, then both partners should stay away from self-pleasuring and porn and like look to each other for that. I think that's got to be a pretty intuitive response. If the porn is literally taking away from your sex life between you and your partner, then yes, it's absolutely a problem. And it hasn't. And there was like a massive meta-analysis on this. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It talks about porn use and the relationship to either failed relationships or failed marriages. And it was a huge
What was the
number.
Can you remember what the outcome was?
It was just the more porn, the less likelihood of the longevity of your. But the thing is, the porn could be a result of problems, and then it doesn't fix it.
Which direction is the correlation arrow going here? Do people that are in bad relationships watch porn, or does porn cause you to have a bad relationship?
Right, and maybe both are true.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just all communication. Like I went with my partner to see Oppenheimer. She didn't fucking even think twice about the Florence Pugh scene. She's like, "Oh, Florence Pugh, great actress. Cool." I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Nice tits." She's like, "Yeah." Can you pass the popcorn?
With a hole
Like, that was
in
it.
the bottom.
That movie was fucking amazing, dude. How is that the part where you're stressing, man?
That was the most important. That was the most important part. So what I've got in my head, there's another article here about the same thing from Distractify.com. After finding out that her husband had an addiction, one woman began documenting her recovery journey and helping other women in her spot on TikTok. Finding out your partner has a drug addiction or drinking problem is one thing, but finding out they are addicted to watching sexually explicit content of other women is a whole different ballpark. How so? Well, it's an addiction that involves betrayal. The partner with the addiction chose to experience and lust over other bodies rather than their partners. When one woman learned her husband had that type of an addiction, she starts documenting on TikTok. So I'm wondering how many men have been rumbled by a partner who evidently doesn't feel particularly comfortable with being sexually open. Sociosexually, in evolutionary psychology speak, I bet that she's very low. I think that she's probably got she said it drove her into anxiety and depression, which probably suggests that she maybe was predisposed to that. Maybe got some self-esteem issues and stuff like that. So she's a perfect cocktail for this to trigger something which is really, really bad in her. I wonder how many men have been caught by that and played the same card that every celebrity for the rest of time when he's been caught cheating has played. It's my addiction. It's my pathology. They've pathologized like using porn once every couple of nights or once every week.
Right.
In an attempt to try and... So I would give it at least a 50% chance, probably more, probably like a 90% chance that this guy doesn't have an addiction to porn. that this is his way of making his partner calm down with the thing.
Was it stated in the thing that he was addicted?
It's said on both that he was addicted, but I'm going to guess that that's self-ID.
Right. But porn addiction is a real thing, and it's really it's.
I don't disagree, but I think porn addiction, genuine porn addiction, is relatively rare. It's really, really rare, actually, especially in a relationship. To be addicted to porn is wild, and to go to recovery groups and stuff. But anyway, the thing that's interesting here is, and obviously like the point to get around to, is it reasonable for a partner to have a problem with their partner watching porn? And if it is it unreasonable for you to pleasure yourself on your own without porn? And if it is, should you have some sort of minority report, mind reporting thing that says the only person that you could fantasize about whilst on your own, even if it wasn't with porn in front of you, is your partner? And what do you do if a thought creeps in about that one girl, that one hot girl from high school, or that chick that trains in the gym, or whatever? How scrutinized should your fantasies be to the point where you feel, I've betrayed my partner? You know, during last night's FAP, I actually thought about Katie from 2007, and that's it. I guess I've cheated on her now. Darling, I'm going to have to take myself to rehab.
What helps me kind of parse through this is thinking about the timeline, because, porn at this level was not available up until 2000, 99 maybe. And then I'd say maybe in 2009-ish is when it became, okay, now you can get any porn you want to stream. So that's an important factor, right? Because what would somebody in the 70s, how were people thinking about this in the 70s? Well, if they didn't have access to porn, they were looking at nudie mags all the time, then I guess that would be a problem. But if they're not, and they're masturbating, well, then they're using their mind to think about something else. I think what that comes down to is the difference between fantasy and reality. And a lot of, this is just my understanding of it, but a lot of women specifically, fantasy to them is so separate to their reality. If you think about how well all of these fantasy novels, like romance novels, do, if we think about how incredible 50 Shades of Grey did, I don't know the numbers on that, but it was a massive thing. It was a cultural phenomenon. That's a movie where I would say the only way a woman can enjoy that is to think about that scenario, and is it with their partner?
So the interesting thing here is men state around about an average of 4 sexual partners per fantasy. So if you're having a sexual fantasy, you will tend to cycle through in one session about 4, because the male desire for sexual variety is significantly higher. Women will tend to be 1, which is why in any romance, I mean, there's probably some novels out there that are a bit different. Almost all romance novels have a single protagonist, right? The woman isn't bouncing from bed to bed between different guys, because that doesn't fulfill the fantasy that on average most women have, which is a single, usually very high value, usually very high status, kind of rough around the edges man that she civilizes. She domesticates him because of his desire for her. That is the typical sort of narrative that you see in this. If men had romance novels, each chapter would be a different gangbang with a group of different women, right? That's the way it would work. So it's definitely using, if you were to say, and there may be people out there that do, if you were to say that even the thought of fantasizing about a different person to your partner constitutes cheating, that is a very female-centric frame to place around this. And that's biological predisposition, very robust. Male desire for sexual variety is higher. Number of fantasies, number of partners in any one given fantasy for men is way higher than it is for women. Now, maybe you can say, if you were sufficiently faithful and this was genuine chastity, you would be able to use your love for your partner and your desire for them, and you could tamp down all of these other things, and this shows that you're not actually as whatever as it is. But if I was to take as balanced of a view as I can. I think that that's firstly unrealistic and secondly a little bit unfair on men. That's not for me to say that men should be going out of their way to like reminisce or fantasize about their coworker at work when they've got a wife who's pregnant and 2 kids at home. But we just need to be realistic here. Like, you don't get to control every single thing that goes through your mind, and unless you're going to peer into someone's mind, and thought crime? Am I allowed to think things anymore? We get into very dangerous territory.
Well, so I don't know who said this, but it's this idea of thinking things is not always the problem. Thinking bad things is not the problem. It's the action of making those things that you think physical. And that can be, so if you're in a search bar on porn, you're searching for that thing you're thinking of. Okay, well, now you're making that thought real. And it is potentially, that can creep into your partner's mind as being something problematic. Even further than that, if you're thinking of another woman, maybe that's bad, maybe that's not. But if you message that woman, you have now, or if you say what you're thinking about that woman to another man, even, that's where it's like you become what you say and what you create in the world much more than what you think.
Yeah, I think
we're just going to think.
Correct.
New thing comes in. And then, so I think in a certain extent, I think women can be correct in this. What would be the line then? Like, don't write out what you want to see. Cause then,
I guess it depends. I guess it depends on exactly how sensitive that particular woman is to what's going on. I would be interested to know whether men would have a problem with their partner watching porn, their female partner watching porn. I would almost be certain at guessing that if it was lesbian porn, which a massive proportion of women do watch, that they probably wouldn't care. It's the same as the like one-sided open relationship that we're seeing in Austin a lot, which is, well, we bring additional people into our marriage or our relationship, but it's always a woman. And fundamentally, the guy just isn't quite as threatened. But yeah, I'd be interested to know what people think. I don't know. In the comments, let us know if you think that watching porn when you're with a partner is cheating, is fantasizing about an imaginary woman cheating, is fantasizing about, like, what if you just enhance your partner a little bit? What if you make them a bit more tanned, or you put them in a blonde wig, or like you imagine that they've got a different job? Like, it's just, there's a line, and at some point you have to say, well, that's it. That's it. But I would say on average that lady there could probably do with doing a little bit of resilience work. For sure. Like if you are getting triggered by your partner watching, and she's recently come out of this thing that she was evidently predisposed to, and she's like trauma response or whatever it is and all the rest of this stuff, I would say on average that person is in for a hard life. If they are permanently being vigilant to, okay, so we walk past Victoria's Secrets. Does he have to close his eyes and walk into a lamppost when it's Victoria's Secrets there? But what about if they change it for body positive models? Does that make it different? Like, that sounds very big phobic or fat phobic or whatever it is. So I don't know. Anyway, next thing. Bradley Cooper, the Leonard Bernstein family defend an actor over the Maestro nose row. So Leonard Bernstein is in a movie, or he is being played by Bradley Cooper in a movie, and it attracted some criticism over the size of Cooper's nose, which some social media users said played up to offensive Jewish stereotypes. Bernstein's family said they were perfectly fine with Cooper using makeup to amplify his appearance. There has also been criticism that a Jewish actor was not cast to play the West Side Story composer. Breaks our hearts to see any misrepresentation or misunderstandings of Cooper's efforts, wrote Jamie Alexander and Nina Bernstein in a statement posted online. Now, you'll remember recently the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs movie started sort of ramping up a little bit of movement. Didn't cast dwarves for the dwarfs, didn't cast little people. And a lot of dwarf actors had a problem with that. And Hollywood came out and said, it's antiquated. They're like figurative dwarfs. It's a fairy tale. And yet, when it suits them, no one that isn't gay can play a gay actor. No one that isn't whatever can play a whatever actor. I think that there's a massive asymmetry going on with the selection effect here. Bradley Cooper, I don't know his politics, but he just looks like someone that would probably be a bit right-wing. And I think that probably doesn't play into it very, very well.
So the dwarves thing is interesting because Frodo Baggins and was played by Elijah Wood, and they're halflings. They're literally 4 feet tall, maybe even smaller than that. And I think the reality was like hobbits have the same dimensions as people, and I think dwarves don't. That's part of their like condition. So it's like, okay, well, is it a height thing that we're looking for? Is it, it is a very weird thing, man. Because on the other side of that, if you had people playing an African American person or a black person, and they just wore blackface, that's the worst of it, right?
It's going to go badly. But if you were to do the reverse, we've got period dramas like Bridgerton and other movies to do with Vikings, series to do with the Middle Ages, and regularly somebody of an ethnic minority that isn't from that era in that region will be injected into it in an attempt to increase diversity. So I don't know. I think that everybody's getting very, very sensitive about characters playing the characters. And I do understand that, for instance, with the dwarf thing, I don't imagine that there's that many roles for dwarfs in Hollywood. So maybe it's a good idea to actually limit those roles to the people for whom there is a very limited amount of work. But then on the flip side of that, if you say, okay, and if you want to cast somebody who is suffering with Parkinson's to play a Parkinson's patient, that's going to go very badly. You're not going to have a particularly good movie because you're not selecting the best person. So this is why it's interesting. It's interesting because you want to have the best person for the role, but you also, there is a degree of like, well, if this role is for a very specific sort of person and they get pushed to one side, that also kind of doesn't feel fair. And I think this tension is what makes it interesting.
This is definitely unprecedented, right? Because now Hollywood knows that they can, the mob can bitch about prosthetics now, and how they can, play up certain stereotypes. But I'm looking right now at an image, and it's Leonard Bernstein next to Bradley Cooper's Leonard Bernstein. There's obviously prosthetics, but there's prosthetic ears. Looks like his cheeks a little bit, and the nose. But I wonder if they just didn't do that, if it would have made a difference. I don't know. Because part of it's like you want to look like the guy, because if people know who Leonard Bernstein is and they recognize his face, well, then it's going to be really important that the person playing him looks like him.
Yeah, so you should have got a Bernsteinian lookalike. When Will Smith played Muhammad Ali, he had his ears pinned back because Will Smith's ears stick out way more than Muhammad Ali's do. And yeah,
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he had his ears pinned back for the movie. Here's something else. I just saw this before I was coming on. You've been following this Vivek Ramaswamy guy. Do you know who that is?
Mm-mm.
Republican candidate, and he is doing a lot of kind of viral talking head moments, whether it's in on-street interviews or to the press. And he's a really, really slick talker. Say what you want about politics and his positions on X, Y, and Z, but he's an unbelievably slick talker. It is very, very, very impressive. And I think he's sort of catching up in the polls and doing all the rest of it. And then I went on his Twitter, and he is doing, because he's young. I think he's 37 or 38. So he's by far the youngest president ever. Maybe he's in his 40s or something, but he's like around about that age. And his debate prep, he always uploads videos of him doing debate prep. And it's this video of him absolutely hammering forehand baseline strokes with his top off in the sunshine. And the guy's in good condition. And I'm like, what world is this? And there's another one, he's 3 hours of debate prep today or whatever. And then there's another one of him with his top off doing burpees with his partner.
Whoa.
It's really interesting.
That's a big change from old Grandpa Joe.
Yeah.
Dude,
Trump, the guy that said that you have a particular number of heartbeats, and if you exercise, it uses up your heartbeats more quickly.
Is that what Trump said?
I'm pretty sure he said that. Or maybe it's a lie that I heard. I don't know.
That's incredible. But the dude's just hammering thunderous forehands on the baseline.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
It's impressive. Do you see that Trump has bowed out of the Republican initial debate, whatever the first GOP debate is, and he's going to live stream with Tucker Carlson on Twitter instead at the same time?
Wow. Okay, so and that's X actually is what it's called now.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's going to be how many views? I mean, doesn't Twitter get the most views of anything right now?
It does, but it's because the criteria for getting a view on it is the lowest. It's
gotcha.
It's a half-second scroll past, and when you've got autoplay on a platform, it counts pretty much anyone going past it as a view, which I don't think is fair. That being said, you can get into the analytics on the back end and see 3-second views, 30-second views, 60-second views. I think
you would just calculate it all watch time. Would be cool. I would love to see that. I would love to see the comparison between the two.
Yeah, hilarious. All right, next thing. San Franciscans are having sex in robo-taxis and nobody is talking about it. Have you ever thought about getting down and dirty in a robo-taxi? All the time. Want to light up a cig or a joint on the drive home from the club? You're not alone. As autonomous vehicles have become increasingly popular in San Francisco, some riders are wondering just how far they can push the vehicle's limits, especially with no front seat driver or chaperone to discourage them from questionable behavior. From some, that's a welcome invitation to test the autonomous vehicle's limits. Megan, a woman in her 20s, took her first robo-taxi on a recent late-night excursion. It was also her first time having sex in a driverless vehicle. Just going to pause there. What do you mean? It was also her first time having sex in a driverless vehicle. Like, that's a rare thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's not everyone.
It's going to be everyone's first. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the standard is not providing exact dates of the rider's debauchery to protect their privacy, but has verified the rides took place through documentation. Okay, so I'm glad that they've been fact-checked on whether or not this happened. We got in and just got straight to it, making out, said Megan, who got into the cruise wearing nothing but a robe. One thing led to another, and he made sure I was taken care of, if you will. I was like, I have no underwear on, and I'm ready to go in this kimono. And I was using his slippers that were 5 sizes too big. This sounds awful. Have you ever tried to have sex in a car that's probably of the size that this autonomous vehicle is?
No.
Right.
No.
I lost my virginity in a VW Lupo, which is increased the difficulty.
That's such. I'm sorry, but that is get more of a UK car to have.
Hey, be more British.
Yeah,
hey?
Be more British. You can't. There's no way.
Yeah, let me tell you, man, like if you don't know what you're doing, not knowing what you're doing in a car is way harder.
So I've seen those autonomous vehicles driving around.
Yep.
In Austin. So every time I see one, I have to take a picture of it going by. It's crazy to me still. It's going to be crazy.
In case somebody's getting butt fucked in the back seat.
Yeah, well, that would be butt fucked in the back seat of a robo-taxi. That's going to be my romance novel. Speaking of romance novels.
That could be the sequel to Dicked Down in Dallas, butt fucked in a robo-taxi.
Yes. And so I think that the easiest solution to this problem is you just say it's a public place. Right. Even though it's private transport, but like you have to have public rules then because you wouldn't be, you're not able to, just because you can't see any driver and the place is empty. It's, illegal to have sex in a subway or in, any sort of tram or something like that. So this is weird too, because there's cameras on the inside of all of those things, so I don't know who gets it. Yeah, there's the cameras everywhere on those things. They have to be because someone could just come in and fuck up the whole entire thing and no one would know. It's like a bird scooter at that point, just a really expensive bird scooter.
Do you reckon anyone's ever had sex on a bird scooter?
While it's moving?
Yeah.
No.
Well, our friend fully face planted off that and it took like 6 weeks to recover.
I know someone who had to have basically reconstructive teeth, like their severed fucking nerves and shit in their teeth, cut open their lip. They fell off a bird scooter, man. How awful.
Me and you have done stupid things on birds driving through Austin downtown.
Thing is, we're too athletic. That's the thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You are tempting fate there the next time that
you can't teach this.
Right. Yeah, you can't. This grace is unstoppable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. The robotaxi thing, I would be very interested to see if this becomes a kink and if you start to see.
Oh, for sure will be.
Yeah. Like Grindr, but for cars.
Whoa.
Driver.
Yeah. DRVR.
Yep. Well, there's a business opportunity.
Yep. Let's do it. Invest now. $69.69 a month.
What else have you been doing? Tell me about your trip to Japan. And what was it like being there?
Oh man, Japan was incredible. The best way to describe Japan is one moment that I had, and it was we all stopped when we saw it and we're like, okay, wow, this is Tokyo. At least Tokyo. We didn't venture outside of it, but this is when we realized, like, wow, this is what Japan is about. This woman's walking her dog, and the dog lifts the leg up to take a piss on like this post. It's kind of like this barricade blocking this causeway where it's only walking. And she takes out her water bottle. It's a literal water bottle that like, it's like a Dasani basically with a spray top on it. And she sprays down where the dog pissed. I have never seen anything like that. There is no litter or garbage anywhere. There are hardly any bins for throwing things away. The engineering of something as simple as an elevator, everywhere I went was ridiculous. So it's like you get in the elevator, you press where you're going, and then you're moving and you're like, wait a minute, did we start moving? And then the door opens. It's like, how did we stop moving? You can't feel it. That's how good the engineering is. It's like the process of being an engineer for an elevator must be so robust. The process, right? I got a cup of coffee at the place next to our Airbnb, got into my elevator that felt like a fucking spaceship. It was like, got down, opened it up, took a left, went right into to get my coffee. This guy made the greatest latte, and I vlogged about it, and people were freaking out. Made the greatest latte ever. He measured out the ice cube. He like literally put the cup on a scale. He had different spoons so that spoons wouldn't touch different of his ground up beans. This process, and he was going pretty fast. It took like 2, 3, 4 minutes to make, but I filmed the whole thing. And it was the greatest latte I've ever had. And he didn't even think about it. He just handed it to me. He goes, there you go. And like looked away. I'm like, bro, if I was handing this to someone, I'd be like, yeah, bitch, you're going to like this thing. You know? Because I'm an American. I'm going to be like, yeah, I just killed that thing right there. You got to tell me how good it is, how good I did. That's just their culture is just find things that are interesting or good and just be the fucking best at it and don't talk about it.
You know that the world champion barista, the current title holder, or at least the title holder in 2021 for a couple of years was Japanese. So I think that they have an unbelievably strong coffee culture.
And whiskey culture too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yo, do you remember that whiskey that we had when we went for sushi at
I love this story because
So.
we got some of the best sushi I've ever had. And I did go to Japan. I probably had better sushi there, but we're not drinking at this. It's like a Tuesday. We didn't want to drink. So they come by after it and they're like, hey, does anyone want whiskey? And we're like, no. He comes back. Our waiter comes back and he's like, so this whiskey has been ranked number 1 in the world for the past 15 years. We had to put our names in 2 years ago to get a bottle of it. And then me and you look at it. We're like, well, now that you mention it,
I'm going to say no.
Yeah, of course I'm going to have some whiskey now. It was literally the best whiskey we could have had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a wait list. They only issue 50 bottles of this around the world each year. It goes to VIPs who know the batch, small batches, all that shit. And then talk to me about, because I've never been to either. Talk to me about Japan and Korea. Like, what was the movement between the two like?
Yeah, so the flight to Korea, I think it's like an hour and 40-minute flight, super easy. Seoul Airport, or Incheon Airport, is amazing. I think that I liked the Korean food and Korean culture more than I expected to. It's definitely someplace where I want to go back for sure. The people and the traditional culture, it is a pretty conservative culture there. Like you're not really allowed to be gay there. I don't think like it's not quite Turkey level. There's obviously, but it's like, yeah, it's like a little bit too much here, guys. But the food was like incredible. It was incredible. It was probably my favorite food I've ever had in any like period. It was.
Do they do Korean barbecue out there, or is it? I guess it's just barbecue out there.
Yeah, but it's like what their Korean barbecue for us is like this big event thing, but for them it's like they're just cooking the food for you and like walking away. It's like like they'll just put the steak on the grill and cook it, flip it, and then they'll cut it for you, and then they'll put it off to the side, and they'll just keep adding more to it. So you just pick and grab when you want something. It's that simple. Like, and yeah, we had that all the time. This one guy took us out. We were drinking with him. Their drinking culture is absolutely insane. It's definitely alcoholic, like style of drinking. We show up, it's immediately 5 straight glasses of beer mixed with soju, like back to back to back to back to back. And then we went out from there, but it was just incredible. Seoul is a great city. Definitely an underrated city, and Korea is going through this massive explosion. At the same time, their birth rate is the worst of any of the modern world.
Correct. Yeah, there's going to be 96% fewer Koreans in 100 years than there will be now.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And Japan,
that's second. Not that far.
Did you see a single pregnant person in Japan or in Korea?
I saw some kids in Japan. I saw some kids in Tokyo.
I saw a child.
And there was like a kindergarten that I walked by, a bunch of cute little kids just running around. Yeah. But Korea, no.
Yeah.
I don't even think I saw a teenager in Korea.
It's not good. Korea's not good on that front. It's really not good.
Yeah. So that was it. That was my experience.
We used to have at one of the big club nights that we used to run, it was Asian Sock, I think, and this couple of guys ran it, and they were able to move 400 people, right? And that meant that they were like super, super, super high value to us, because 400 people in a nightclub's a nightclub, right? And then if you've already got a busy nightclub, that's just pure profit. So we would sort of grease the grooves of these guys and try and keep in with them as much as possible. And they would always arrive 1:30 in the morning, like super, super late, and order just Jaeger bombs. All that they wanted was Jaeger bombs. But I'm sure you'll know this from fitness. Asian people lack a high proportion of Asian people lack a particular enzyme that allows them to break down alcohol, and they got Asian flush. And it's like a mild allergic reaction to having alcohol. On the more severe end, it can actually cause people to feel like digestive discomfort, and they can want to throw up. And there's like the baseline wanting to throw up of just having a Jaeger bomb or 5 Jaeger bombs. Like just a normal person who can digest this stuff will have that, and then you roll on top this lack of an enzyme and the Asian flush and all this other stuff. And dude, it was like every single time that they were coming in, there was a balancing act that me and my business partner had to make, which was 300 people, 400 people, fantastic, lots of sick, like lots of sick,
puking,
upstairs in the R&B room. So there was always this balancing act that we had to make. But it's really fascinating. I'd love to find out from an Asian person why alcohol it's such an aggressive type of drinking. It's binge drinking. There is no chill.
No, I've never done a dinner like this. I don't think I ever will again. Like it's almost so. Just picture this: we sit down, we're like getting excited. They're cooking the meat. We have a bunch of big bottles of beer and soju, which is like kind of like watered down. It tastes like watered down vodka, but it's rice liquor and it's Korean. And he'll pour it in a glass that's like maybe 8 ounces, like a cup of coffee size glass. And then he'll put in at least a shot of soju in each one of them. And he'll hand it to you. And it's 8 ounces. It's, and he will, you cheers. And then there's a bunch of interesting stuff. You point your glass away from the elder. Like the bottom of your glass, you point away from your elder. Okay. Also, when you're receiving a drink, you have to grab it with your right hand. You should usually just drink with your right hand. And then you should probably hold on to your arm, or like basically your wrist or your arm or your chest when someone's giving you a drink, when they're like your elder.
Did you ask why?
It's just out of respect. Yeah.
Why is that respect?
It looks pretty respectful, actually. It's just like, it's like bowing almost. It's like a very human movement. Like, I'm really happy to accept this from you. So we did that. You drink all 8 ounces. Boom, puts it down. More stuff goes on. It's like, oh shit, you filled it again. Cheers. It's as soon as he fills it, he hands it to you. Cheers again and again and again. Then we eat a little bit. Oh, I forgot, we haven't been drinking again. And it's chugging fucking 8 ounce drinks. The thing was, though, I am a 240 pound, Anglo-Saxon descent. Yeah, but I don't really drink that often. When I do, I'll drink pretty hard and I'll party pretty hard, but I'm not an experienced drinker by any stretch. But he was getting hammered. We were all getting hammered, but he kind of bowed out a little bit earlier than I expected. For people whose part of their culture is binge drinking, which is super interesting. And that's interesting why you brought up the like Asian flush thing, because I think that played a part in it for sure.
You can take, my old business partner used to take a tablet that I think helped to fix the particular enzyme
interesting
problem that he had. But yeah, man, I don't know. I wonder what people from Korea and Japan think when they come to the UK. Like, look at me coming from one of the hilarious, most binge drinking cultures on the planet, going, these Asian people drinking a lot. Like,
yeah, no, Chris, I'm sorry. Dude, I did a seminar. This is also part of my trip. I did a seminar in Sunderland, but I was staying in Newcastle. Literally on that street that you used to work on.
Yeah, for the people who know Newcastle, he was staying just behind Avika, just down the hill from Lavello.
I have never seen nightlife like that. It was the loudest. And dude, it was people of all ages. There were like 40-year-olds getting, oh my God, they were getting shit-faced and screaming. It was nuts. That was binge drinking like I have never really seen.
Well, it's almost treated like a competitive sport.
For sure. Yes. I don't see that. Like, you do not see that in Austin. You don't.
No. Well, I guess, I don't know. We go on 6th Street sometimes, like if we're going to see comedy and stuff. And sometimes there's...
But even there, it's not that aggressive, man. It's not.
Yeah, I suppose you are right. If you've got some bachelorette party in from Nashville wearing pink
they're having
light
fun, like I feel like the people in Newcastle are like, oh fuck, it's Friday, let's black out. Like,
did you ever used to have that? Because I remember when...
Oh, we did.
I was like 20...
now that I say that, those words have literally come out of my mouth when I was younger. So.
Yeah, it's Friday. Let's fuck ourselves
black
up.
Out. Yeah,
yeah. There was this thing, and this was one of the big changes that I had when I did sobriety. I went from having a Friday afternoon itch, which was this compulsion, this desire to party. Like, I just wanted to go out and get fucked up. And even if it wasn't get fucked up, I just wanted to go out. Like, I'd got to the end of the week and I'd conditioned myself into, okay, it's a Friday. I've worked hard this week. Therefore, it's time to go out and party. And even if you take it moderately, a moderate session in the UK is still going to be 8 drinks, right? Plus, probably. And yeah, it was every single week. You get to Friday afternoon and there's this, it's like when you know that you want a coffee, but for a beer.
Yeah. Dude, all I can say is there's certain, like the music industry, which I've tapped into a bit in Austin. It's like the excitement of Friday happens every night. That's when it gets really scary. Like you wouldn't expect it, but like your boys have a show at, somewhere on 6th Street or somewhere on West 6th Street or Rainy or whatever. And you end up showing up and they're killing and it's fun and everyone's dancing. And then their set ends and they want to party now because everyone's happy. It's
they're
like,
fired up.
Wait, it's a fucking Tuesday night, and you guys are going to do this on Thursday and, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's crazy when stuff like that happens. The entertainment business is for sure a dangerous one. I've also been in the comedian, like I've been tapped into the comedy. We were at the club. We were sitting in the green room with all those comedians. They're all drinking, smoking the whole time. So yeah, I think that cultural excitement, just always being excited, is really tough. The highs are high, man, but the lows are very low.
Yeah, I guess I was talking to Nick, mutual friend with the mustache, and I was saying to him about how, because he doesn't drink when he plays, he DJs, it must be so hard to do something that's adrenaline fueled and that's your passion, and you've just left a crowd at 2 a.m. with them in this unbelievably hyped state, and you've been thinking and you've been focusing, you've been doing all this stuff, and now it's time to get into a quiet car and go home. and your bird's been asleep for 4.5 hours, and you need to sneak in, and you just lie there and stare at the ceiling, and you just hear this loud noise. Yeah, it's really difficult, dude. Like the nightlife industry is, and all sorts of entertainment that happen late at night is fucking unforgiving. Like I was messaging,
and relatively thankless too, I think, because it is transient in a way where like the people. So if you're in a bachelor party or bachelorette party, you go and party and have the time of your life at these bars, but then you wake up and reality hits and you don't even want anything to do with those people, those things. They represent the hurt.
That is super, super interesting. So, especially if you're not, this is the difference, I think, largely between being a producer and being a DJ, or by being a musician who plays gigs and a musician that makes music. Because if you're just there to be a soundtrack to the party, there's an upper bound on how existentially connected people are going to feel to you, right? They're not like, you're not changing their life. You might give them a really great event or whatever, and you might even get famous off the back of it. But it's totally different to being someone who produces music that they listen to on the way to the gym, or after they've had a breakup, or that helps them to understand that they were, that they were alone as a child, or whatever.
I cannot recommend this documentary enough. It is the Avicii documentary, because that is what killed him. Ultimately, I believe that's what killed the man. Was there was a brilliant scene where he's arguing with his manager and he goes, "Hey man, I'm not doing Vegas. I'm not doing the residency in Vegas." And he's like, "I kind of signed you up for it." And he's like, "I don't fucking care. I'm not fucking doing it. I'm quitting. I'm not going to DJ anymore. I am not doing Vegas." Smash cut. He's in fucking Vegas doing it.
Oh.
And they had a show counter on it. It was like first 20 shows, he's fucking loving it, and it gets up to like 570 shows in like less. I mean, it was literally maybe a day off flying from. He would tour, and then he would have his residency that he would fly back to. So the off days he was doing a residency.
Yeah,
and that was it right there. In this day and age in music, you this is content now. It's algorithm based. So you can get big and famous from the comfort of your own home. You produce content and you can get it out through social media. It's not about radio plays. It's not about, because Avicii came up through blogs. I don't know, or where blogs were like, I don't know if you remember any of those blogs that we used to get music off of. But they would promote these DJs, and that's how they got big. And then they gig like crazy. But now Spotify is algorithmic. You have a good enough song that goes well on TikTok, it becomes algorithmic. It'll bounce around. You can stay home. And it sucks that a guy like that missed that. He didn't get a chance to hit that. And this life that he lived was not the life that he wanted. And he paid the ultimate price for it.
Yeah, dude, that's sad.
Yeah, I love that documentary, and anyone who's listening,
still never seen
absolutely,
it. I've still never seen
absolutely watch it. Definitely,
right.
It's like a character study on that.
I've told you this story before, but it happened on the podcast. Fucking hell, 4 years ago. But it's Cozzy, right? So Christoph,
our boy, yeah,
mutual friend of ours, who's DJ'd for me for 15 years, and he told me this story on the podcast, which you can go back and listen to. It's like 4 years old. It's really great. It's an insight into the life of a touring DJ. I think it was Wednesday or a Thursday, and he was in Argentina, and the next time that he was going to get to sleep in a bed that wasn't in the air was Tuesday. So it was almost a full week of sleeping on planes or in
Sprinter vans,
lounges, or in vans or whatever. This is a guy who has played Madison Square Garden supporting Eric Prydz. He's got a residency this summer at High Ibiza. I think it's every Tuesday with Adam Beyer, and maybe Prydz there as well, or maybe Hot Since 82 or something. As big as it gets before you get to absolute, like, insane superstar, like Ed Sheeran of dance level. And, from the outside, it looks really glamorous, but he told me the story, and he hadn't been sleeping all that much, and he'd been, like, drinking and partying and stuff like that throughout his shows. And then he had this period, and he got back, and he couldn't sleep, even though he was like super, super tired. And he was watching shopping channels, like QVC and live TV shopping for some reason, and he couldn't work out why. And then he says he kind of blacks out. He has this blank spot in his memory. And then he came to at the local supermarket that's 24 hours. It's across the street from where my house, just down the street from where my house is in Gosforth in Newcastle. And he came to and he was sat on the floor of the toiletries aisle, and he had one of every different type of hair gel and hair putty laid out around him on the floor. And he was taking little bits of it and putting it on his head, scooping his hand in and like slapping it on his head. And he had this thought in his head, like, yeah, my hair's shit. Like, I need to try all of these different things. So he's putting it on his head, and then he sort of comes to out of this sort of fever dream and looks around, and he's like, what am I doing here? Stands up, grabs a floret of broccoli, 48 dishwasher tablets, and walks out without paying for them. Gets home and wakes up the next day to find hundreds of parcels arriving at his front door for like little 5-year-old girls' crop tops and toys and lawnmower accessories and like an inflatable pool, all of these different things. And he just had a small psychotic break.
Wow.
And then he went to a doctor, presumably a psychiatrist. He said, yeah, that's a combination of sleep deprivation and a bunch of really
that's psychosis right there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I would love to see what like his blood work was.
Oh yeah.
At that moment.
What is running through your body that's causing this to happen?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Insane.
Wow.
Insane, dude. And he was saying, like, you know, from the outside, the DJing and you're playing and everyone's got their hands in the air and they know the words to your song, or they've listened to it on Spotify, or they've come specially to Ibiza to just see you and your set. And maybe less so with a residency, but certainly when you're touring. He said the reality is that you get back to a hotel room and you haven't eaten in probably 8 hours, and maybe you're drunk or maybe you're not, and you're alone and it's dark. And you order room service and you sit in your room on your own and you try and chill out and you try and wind down and you don't. And then you eventually go to sleep and you wake up the next day having only had a few hours sleep because you need to get on a plane to get to the next place, to get up and you can't remember where you are. You arrive at the venue and you sound check, and it's a different place with a different club and a different promoter, but the same promoter and the same club and the same place, because it is just over and over and over again. The guy meets you, he gives you a beer, he explains the club, you sound check, you let the warm-up DJs go on, you start partying, and away you go. And
Chris, the people who watch him are having way more fun than he is.
The best part of being a DJ is being in the audience. Yeah.
So this is a really interesting story. My buddy Pat, who you've met, he's an incredibly talented singer-songwriter here in Austin, and he's from Ireland. And he was opening for this singer-songwriter that I used to listen to back when I listened to Pandora. I mean, that's literally 2010 or something, where Pandora was the original algorithmic music. And one of his songs was so important to me. Like, I loved it. And then I found out that Pat was opening for this guy. His name's Joe Pug. And the song's called Hymn Number 35. And I watched Pat play. Pat was incredible. I watched this guy play, Joe Pug. It was very good. But it wasn't what I remember. It wasn't as this thing that I had thought it was going to be, which is fine. It's okay. And he played that song that I love. And then at the end, Pat's selling merch. He's selling merch. And then everyone leaves. And I walk up to him and I'm like, Hymn Number 35. I have loved that song for over a decade now. And the lyrics to it, every part of it was so mystical to me. I was like, what were you thinking when you wrote that? Or what is this song about? And his answer was, I don't know, man. I was just young and I just wrote something. And then he just kind of like walked away. And I was like, fuck. Like, it really isn't important to him. It really, like, it was then a little bit, but I have made this into something that it's important to me. The lyrics in it are incredible. It's probably one of my favorite singer-songwriter songs ever. And the guy who made it all he had to say was, I was young when I wrote it and I don't really know. And he just kind of fumbled off and walked away.
What's the lesson that you took away from that?
it's the same thing with Kazi. It's like the experience to somebody else with your art is just, it's usually going to be much more valuable than your own experience, which is really crazy to think about. Really, genuinely, as creators ourselves, somebody definitely has taken a Chris Williamson clip or video or something that you have done, and it is much, much more important to them than it could ever be to you.
So that's probably right. But I would say from a creator perspective, I'm trying to think if this is right. I might go out on a limb and say that it's true. I think that being a podcaster is probably reducing down the pain of being a creator about as much as it's possible to do it. Even the difference between being a YouTuber and being a podcaster, there's so much more performance required in doing the YouTube thing. If it's like, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to give you my top 10 tips for doing this thing, because you need to write a script. You need to write an outline, and then you need to do take after take after take. Oh, fuck, I flubbed that line. Fuck, that was what was the thing that I'm supposed to say in that? And then you come back to it. So that's a level of performativeness. And then if you take it one step further and you go to working on a nighttime as some sort of a performer, some sort of a DJ, your sleep patterns all over the place. Are you actually making money during the day? Do people actually care about what it is that you're doing? There is a high price that you pay for it. And we've spoken about this before. Even the guys that vlog, the travel vlogging stuff that they do, 50% of the trip is lived through the lens of the camera. And until you get to the stage where you have a videographer following you around, which almost nobody does, proportionally, nobody gets there. Even if you're Mike Thurston and you've got, an amazing videographer, you've got Louis following you around and it's all cool and you live in Dubai or you've got a villa in Marbella, even then, you got to take time out of the experience to record the experience so that it's there. And it's like, okay, well, what? I guess in some regards, you have this really cool record on your YouTube channel that's beautifully edited of all of the cool stuff that you did. But I watched this video a little while ago about how when you're
not actually doing it, is what you're saying, right?
You're not in the moment. And there's another element. There's a study that was done on people that take photos. And when you take a photo of a place or an experience, the brain drowns out most of the other sensory information and actually focuses more on the visual. So it's good, not only that you have a record of it, but it also focuses your attention into sort of a sensorial aspect down onto the visual. The problem is, most of the things that you feel about an experience are outside of just the visual.
Oh yeah,
it's the smell of the guy smoking his cigarette down the street from the Vatican, and it's the sound of the street. It's so much more immersive. So yeah, long story short, you're right, and I think that a lot of people take way more away from shows than the creators do, but the creators get to take as close to the audience as I think with pretty much any other art form, because remember, it's their curiosity that's driving forward. It's less performative than playing songs. It's less performative than doing YouTube. And on top of that, the price that you have to pay in order to do it, it's on your terms. It's your publishing schedule. It's aggressive and there's fucking tons and tons and tons and tons of work to do. But I think if you were to pick something out of the ecosystem, it's the one that's sort of the most holistic, but it's also the one that's the least viral, which is why a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, they don't do it to your level because it takes a while. And you got, there's luck, there's talent, there's a bunch of things that come into play as well.
Yeah. Well, you've pivoted, right? You've changed the style of content that you do as well. And I think
that was a risk, but it was ultimately an important thing for me to do, to try and branch out and do different things, because if people are attracted to myself as a creator, then they have to be attracted to actually me. And I don't want to do, this audience capture thing that would just, I think, would ruin me.
Here's an interesting question. Do you think that Philip DeFranco is audience captured?
Yes. But again, he is reporting. So the variability of all of his reports, but he does much more so now. He adds in a little bit of his own life. He talks about, one time he talked about his weight loss. He's talked about, even when he talks about his merch and the importance that it means to him, it's still part of him.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate audience capture, which your boy wrote about. Gurvinder. He wrote about Nikocado avocado. That article I actually pulled up on my friend's podcast the other day. I just was on his podcast talking about audience capture, and he defined it perfectly. And the way that he described Nikocado was as Nicholas Perry, the violinist veganist. And then obviously he turns into this glutton because he follows his audience capture. So ultimately we are captured a little bit by our audience, and that's okay. You have to perform and you have to provide a good entertainment service. It cannot just be simply for yourself. But at the same time, you do have to take risks, and you do have to do things that not many people are doing. I've noticed your risks that you take that you think aren't risks, but they genuinely are. Like, you will spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for production.
Yeah. Bringing Sam Harris on was one of the biggest risks that I've had recently, which is so crazy to say. Like, but he just has such a vehement group of people on the internet that really, really don't like him. And I've said it fucking a bunch of times after the episode. I had so much fun recording that podcast. I was like, caught myself at least twice grinning like an idiot when I knew that the camera was on him. Just really, really enjoying it and being like, this is fun. This is super fun. And
I love experiences like that, man. Like that's what it's really about. Any performance, once you get into that groove of being like, oh fuck, this is amazing. This is why I love doing what I do. Yeah. So I just made a video at the CrossFit Games where I'm lifting with two other.
Is that the Wall Street weightlifter one?
Yep.
Everyone should go and check that out on Zach's channel.
Yeah. And I haven't gotten more comments from people being like, this is your best video I have ever seen. They're probably newer viewers. I have some really good ones from like the past 5 years, but the real reason why was, dude, we were having a fucking blast. I was laughing, smiling. Like I'm getting the chills thinking about it. I was like, this is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
And it can't always be like that. But when it is and you capture it, it's like, that's why we do it. And it makes you feel so good.
Hell yeah. Where should people go? They want to check out more of your stuff.
Go to just search ZACK space TELANDER in the search bar, or you can go to youtube.com/@Zack Telander. Coach_ZT is my Instagram. And then if you would like some programming, if you want to get a stronger squat, you want to get generally strong, or if you want to go into weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, which I highly suggest, you can go to patreon.com/Zack Telander.
And if you want to listen to some banging tunes, search for Telander on Spotify.
Oh yeah, I've got some stuff coming out.
Fuck yeah. All right, man. Let's go to Soho House. I'm hungry. All right.
Bye.
Bye. If you enjoyed that episode, then press here for a selection of the best clips from the podcast over the last few weeks. And don't forget to subscribe.